Bad play calling in pressure situations, cannot get a stop in pressure situations, and by the way, maybe tackle someone on defense. Your 2024 Cincinnati Bengals on display last night in Baltimore in a crushing 35-34 loss. You are in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. We are not going to have fun today, so if you came here looking for that, please hit stop and exit whatever platform you're listening to me on. We'll talk about the refs. We'll get to that. We'll talk about the wasted performances. There's plenty to get to with this one as the Bengals dropped to 4-6 on the year. Just a golden opportunity to get to 5-5, but they love wasting those this year, don't they? Let's start with this stat that will really put into context everything you need to know about this team this year. Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic had this. I kind of dabbled with it, but did not realize the context of it throughout the NFL. So let's start with this from Paul Dehner Jr. The other 31 teams who are not the Cincinnati Bengals this year, when those 31 teams score 33 or more points, they are 38-1. So outside of the Bengals, there are 39 instances of a team scoring 33 or more points this year. They've won 38 of those 39 games. The Bengals have scored 33 points or more in 5 games this year. They are 2-3 in those games. 2-3 in those games. So this year in the NFL, when teams score 33 or more, they've only lost a total of 4 times, and 3 of those 4 have been the Bengals. An epically bad defense, an incredible amount of talent being wasted on offense, which you saw last night. Jamar Chase, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. Joe Burrow throws for 428, and they still lose. They cannot finish the fight on defense. That's my big takeaway so far this year, and from last night in particular. On defense, when push comes to shove, an awesome first half. You could not have been more excited with the defense holding Lamar freaking Jackson and the Ravens to 7 points in the first half. Couldn't have been happier about it. Then the second half comes along. Let's look at what this team has done this year defensively when push comes to shove, okay? Let's take a look at this. In the first game against Baltimore, they had a 10-point lead in the third quarter, lost the game. Last night, with 5 minutes left in the third quarter, they were up by 14, lost the game. So right there in those 2 crucial games, you've got double-digit leads in the fourth quarter, and you lose the game. Twice against the same team. You'd seen it happen before, and you let it happen again. With 4:14 to play in the second game of the season against the Kansas City Chiefs, the Bengals had 1st and 10 with 4 minutes to go in good field position and a 2-minute lead. They lost the game. This team cannot finish the fight. Against Washington, a rookie quarterback playing the 3rd game of his NFL career, after pulling within a score of the Commanders at home in the fourth quarter, Jaden Daniels and company go on a 12-play, 70-yard touchdown drive that pretty much put it away and out of reach and dropped the Bengals to 0-3. That's what this team has been this year. A really good team that just finds a way to screw it up at the end. Blame who you want. There's plenty of blame to go around, but they cannot finish the fight. They cannot close out games. They're in every single one of them, with the exception of the Philly game. They're right there at the end every time. I mean, even against the dog crap Patriots, you get the ball with under a minute to go, and all 3 timeouts, you go 3 and out. Now, there's a lot of asterisks on that game. Joe Burrow was still very stiff. You could tell he wasn't with it. But every single week, it's one thing to have every game be close. A lot of games are close in the NFL, but to consistently find a way to not be able to pull it out at the end, demoralizing. Blame whoever you want, and we'll talk about the officials too. But aside from last night, there is a pattern here that the Bengals, in crunch time, on defense in particular, suck. Suck. It's unforgivable. The defense is awful. Man, did I bang on that Cam Taylor-Britt drum this offseason. I even said you have to consider that when you're extending other players because he's going to demand top 10 cornerback money. He might not be in the league in 3 years. It has been a downright awful season for him, and when you expect to be an excellent team, you can't have no cornerbacks. He's still probably the Bengals' best cornerback, and he is just getting ate alive. An awful season continued with him last night in Baltimore. Just a terrible missed tackle on the Ravens' 4th best receiver that allows him to go, 67 yards to the house, something like that. I don't know what it was. someone I don't think most of us had ever heard of. I'm sorry, I'm going to look up his name now. And I apologize to you because you're whoever it was. I can't find it. I'm not going to look. You guys all saw the play. It was Terrell. What was his last name? That's going to drive me nuts now, so I have to find it. 3 plays, 92 yards. This was the one that pulled it to 21-20. Tylan Wallace. I apologize, Tylan, because you absolutely just humiliated Cam Taylor-Britt on an 84-yard touchdown. Logan Wilson couldn't catch you. You expect that. He's a linebacker. Geno Stone with an awful pursuit angle on you. He couldn't catch you. And you're a punt returner, so you're great along the sidelines. But at any rate, Cam Taylor-Britt, the Bengals' number 1 corner, who likes to talk and likes to let you know, just with one of the worst tackling efforts you've ever seen, allowing an 84-yard touchdown to cut the lead to 1 point. And thank God Justin Tucker even missed the point. You got lucky there. You caught a little break there. Something that never happens. Misses a tackle, drops an interception later, and just every time Rashad Bateman caught a ball, Cam Taylor-Britt seemed to be about 2 steps behind him. You cannot be a decent defense in the NFL when you have no cornerbacks. And the Bengals have no cornerbacks right now. What happened to Cam Taylor-Britt? Couldn't tell you. This whole secondary is bad. It is downright bad, but he's the one guy you thought would kind of be the centerpiece to help those other guys look good. No. Downright bad. I don't know that he'll be a starter next year. He's got some things to figure out. Maybe he can be the number. I don't know. I'm not going to go down that hole right now. What I do know is he has been an absolute liability on the field this year. And where do you go? I mean, it is what it is at this point, right? Like, if you listen to this show all year, you've heard me say, like, hold your stock on him. He had the incredible pick against Mahomes. He had another incredible one that got called back by penalty. He had some pop here and there. But last night, he just got ate alive in Baltimore. Unforgivable. Sheldon Rankins and Geno Stone, the Bengals' 2 big free agent acquisitions on defense, stunk it up last night. Stunk it up. Did you hear Sheldon Rankins' name called? I saw him jogging toward Lamar Jackson as Lamar Jackson took off for a first down. Now, I don't expect you to catch him, but at least act like you're trying. Geno Stone had like a good 2 weeks there. Maybe that injury against the calf is still bothering him. I don't know. What I do know is the guys the Bengals have brought in to beef up this defense have done the opposite. They've vegetabled up this offense. It's been bad. Or this defense, rather. It's been ugly. I mean, the Cam Taylor-Britt missed tackle on the 84-yard touchdown. Geno Stone's right there. You're thinking, all right, still a 25-yard game. Nope. Awful pursuit angle. Awful pursuit angle. And Logan Wilson even kind of slowed him down for you. Bengals defense right now is just, they'll find a way to screw it up. I was so happy with them. So happy with them holding the Ravens to 7 in that first quarter, or in the first half. You hold the likely MVP, the MVP frontrunner to 7 in the first half. And then you come out in the second half and wet the bed. I mean, just miserable. Just miserable. Yeah, you look all right when you're playing the Giants and Browns. They've given up 76 points in their 2 games against Baltimore this year. 76 points in their 2 games against Baltimore this year. And everyone's to blame. I mean, I know I mentioned a few players right there. Lou Anarumo catches a lot of heat. Everyone's to blame. Everyone is doing a bad job. At this point in the season, you're 10 games in. If you haven't figured it out by now, you're probably not going to figure it out with this group. So do what you got to do in the offseason because these guys ain't it. Simple as that. And I said before the season, there's some issues as far as a lot of your key guys are getting up there in age, and it's showing. It showed last night. It showed all year. You know, B.J. Hill had an excellent game. Trey Hendrickson got close to Lamar all the time. I mean, there's only so much you can do against Lamar Jackson. We all saw the incredible play where they had him back at the 32 and he ends up on the 1-yard line. He's a phenom. Okay, I get that. Lamar Jackson's going to get his. But Tylan Wallace? Saw Trey Hendrickson covering Mark Andrews at one point. The only good pass rusher you have is in coverage? It's a whole thing. Just a meltdown at the end. Just a total meltdown at the end where in the last, 19 minutes, the Ravens score 4 touchdowns? I mean, they got a touchdown every time they touched the ball in the last 4 possessions, right? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. In the last 17 minutes and 46 seconds, the Ravens scored 4 touchdowns. Bengals can't finish the fight. It's not a last night thing. It's not a this month thing. It's an all year long thing. When push comes to shove, when the 12th round hits, the Bengals are going to get punched in the mouth and knocked out. They have a great jab and a great hook. They wear number 1 and number 9. A great uppercut. But their defense stinks, just gets punched in the face repeatedly and can't do anything about it. And doesn't really seem to care. I mean, the missed tackling is just unforgivable. Just unforgivable. You think a team goes out there and gets embarrassed in week 1 the way they do, things would turn around? What a waste of a season this has been to this point. Way too much talent to be 4-6. The Bengals' best defense is their offense. Keep the other team off the field. And they did a good job of that early on last night. I mean, I think the Ravens on their first 6 possessions had 4 3-and-outs. They're trying to win too. They made adjustments in the second half. The Bengals didn't. Did they not think that Lamar Jackson and company weren't going to go in the locker room and figure a few things out? You're in the NFL. Lou Anarumo, you're one of the longest tenured coordinators in football. You got to be ready for everything. Did you think the Ravens were going to come back out and do the same thing that got them 7 points in the first half? Infuriating, man. Infuriating. And then on offense. And it's hard to beat up on the offense when they put up 34 points again. But again, in crunch time, the play calling just doesn't make sense. And it's a blurred line right now between, is it the play calling? Is it where Joe decides to go with the ball? But the one that sticks out to me, and I think sticks out to everyone, is with 9:33 left to play in the game, the Bengals are up 21-20. It's 3rd and 2 on the Baltimore 34. Let me say that for you again. 9.5 minutes left in the game. Bengals lead 21-20. They're on the Baltimore 34. They pass up a 51-yard field goal. Okay, that's fine, because your defense isn't stopping anyone. They pass up a 51-yard field goal to go for it. Well, first of all, they have it on 3rd and 2, so obviously you go for it there. You throw a deep ball to Jamar Chase, it goes incomplete, whatever. I don't love that, because if you look at the previous plays, they've been dinking and dunking all the way down the field for 5 and 7 and 6. So when it's 3rd and 2, why the hell they try to do a deep ball, I don't know. But if you're going for it on 4th down anyways, okay, whatever. Deep ball to Jamar goes incomplete. Now it's 4th and 2. Same spot, still on the 34. Deep ball to Jermaine Burton, the guy who was inactive last week because he couldn't get to a meeting and then wore pajamas to the game. What are we doing here? Jamar was wide open underneath, by the way. So that's why, as great as Joe Burrow is, he's allowed to have some mistakes here and there, right? Everyone does it. But why are those plays being called in that position anyways? It's 3rd and 2. Bengals didn't run the ball great, but Kirk Herbstreit said 155 times last night, the Bengals' short pass is their run. What'd Chase Brown have through the air? I mean, he had 9 catches for 52 yards. So about 6 yards every time he caught the ball, right? All night long, he was there underneath, getting 5-6 yards. 3rd and 2, you go 2 deep balls? I don't know if it's Joe. I don't know if it's Zach. Whoever it is, do better. You got a chance to go down and go up 2 scores with what would probably be 6 or 7 minutes left at that point. It's like, and on offense, they were excellent all night. But again, kind of like with the first game against Baltimore, it's like in the pressure situations, Zach Taylor's folding with these play calls. He's overthinking it every single week at some point. It's not difficult. The underneath stuff was there all night, and it was again on 4th and 2. But on 3rd and 2, I don't know. Again, when the Bengals' best defense is their offense staying on the field, and you're getting 5-6 yards a pop of those underneath throws, I don't know that you want the deep balls all the time. They're great. But on 3rd and 2 from the 36, when you have the lead, and it's working, that's how you're down on the 34, whatever it is at that point. 4th and 2, it went incomplete. Ravens get the ball. What do they do from there? They get the ball on the 35, and of course they go down and score because that's all they did in the second half. And it does put the offense in a tricky situation. You've got to be mistake-free at the end because your defense stinks. This team cannot get out of its own way. Why are you going away from what's working in that situation? Why, again, week after week, this is my knock on Zach Taylor as a play caller. He makes life harder than it needs to be. Ravens weren't really doing a lot to stop you. And also, when you throw those short yardage passes, it keeps Joe Burrow from getting dismantled as he did throughout the game. And shame on the dumb refs for not calling a flag when Marlon Humphrey takes about 3 steps and rocks him on a cornerback blitz in the third quarter. And we're going to get to that next. Let's get into that right now. The officials at the end of the game obviously miss a couple big calls. On the 2-point conversion, the Bengals going for 2 to win. Love that decision. You're right there. Go ahead, do it. Your defense isn't stopping Lamar Jackson anyways. So Mike Gesicki gets mauled. Kirk Herbstreit tells you that. Should have been defensive pass interference. And then Joe Burrow gets cracked in the head. A penalty 100 times out of 100. Neither one of them gets called. The officials are awful. The officials throw flags a lot. Not in these situations, they don't. They suck. Clete Blakeman, you stink. When it goes to the post-game press conference, I bet the NFL loves the panel sitting there, and before they can even get the camera set up in position on them, they're talking about the officials. Isn't that great? And the NFL won't do anything about it because they know we'll move on. They won't do anything about it. That's the news cycle in general. Just ignore it. Right? Just ignore it. People will forget, and they will. They will. My issue is not as much with the refs here as it is with Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor. I do another podcast with Jed DeMusi called Old Sports Stories, where we just kind of talk about life and sports, and we like to go back and talk about baseball players from the 70s. If you want to listen to it, go ahead. But a few weeks ago on there, we do pet peeves on that show, and my pet peeve one week was fans who don't like players who complain to the refs. Joe Burrow doesn't complain to the refs very much. That's that 7-4-0 blood. Joe Burrow and I grew up about 50 minutes apart from each other. His high school and mine played each other in the playoffs twice. It's in his blood to not complain. That's old boy culture, Southeastern Ohio, man. We're not gonna complain. We're gonna pull up our bootstraps, go on to the next one. You know who does complain? LeBron James. You know who did complain? Tom Brady. You know who does complain? Caitlin Clark. You know who else complains? Patrick Mahomes. What do all these people have in common? They're the best. They don't complain because they're whiny. They complain because in their DNA, the reason they are so great, and this is what my pet peeve was, is people not understanding this. The reason those people are so great is because they want to get every possible edge in every position. I don't know that Tom Brady always believed it was pass interference or it was roughing the passer, but he knew it was going to work. He knew that the complaining helped. Joe, if you want to get every single edge you can get, you've got to start bitching at these refs. You've got to. It's absurd. I know you don't want to. I know you're tough as nails and I love you for it. But you have got to start complaining to these officials. That's what great players do. And I don't think it's because they're whiny. I think it's because they know it gives them one more advantage to win the game. And if you're Joe Burrow, with this defense, you need every advantage you can get. Complain to the refs. Zach Taylor, same thing. Same thing. In the post-game press conference, you go up there and you go nuts for your guys. Your quarterback couldn't use his left hand last night trying to get his helmet because of a late hit. You should be going insane. Take the fine. It'll win you some games. Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor have got to be better in this regard. And I know that as a fan, you don't want to be the fan of a team that's complaining, but guess what? It works. It worked for Tom Brady. It works for LeBron James. It works for elite athletes. And Joe Burrow, of course, he's not in that GOAT conversation yet, but in the NFL right now, he's one of about 2, 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks now with Lamar kind of putting himself back into position, who is at the top of the game. You have got to bitch and moan if you want to get these calls. That could have gave you another shot. Joe, If you complain about the Marlon Humphrey one, maybe the 2-point conversion one gets called. Maybe you get another crack at it. Maybe we're sitting here smiling this morning. You got to take every edge you can get. Got to make noise there. That said, I mean, there's a lot of things we could sit here and talk about. I got a whole list right in front of me. But it should have never got to that point. It should have never got to that point. They just unraveled the Chase Brown fumble, of course. Bengals are up 21-7 with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. Chase Brown fumbles. Ravens score 5 plays later. And then the 84-yard touchdown to Tylan Wallace. Just a complete collapse. Crumbled. Can't be mad at the offense. Could you do better? Sure. But not by much. Not a lot of teams score 34 points and lose. As I told you at the top of the show, only one other team has done that all year. The Bengals have done it 3 times. There's a lot of blame to go around. The good news, and it should have never got to the position where the Bengals were in dire need of a November 7th win, but the Bengals now, we sit here, it's November 8th. Bengals only have one more game this month against the Chargers in 9 days. So they'll have some time. Joe will have some time to heal up. Hopefully you get Orlando Brown Jr. back, and then you got the bye week, and then you go to Pittsburgh. And what is probably, these next 2, you have to win. You've got to beat the Chargers. You've got to beat the Steelers. Simple as that. And again, we've beat this drum all year long, but maybe if you don't treat the September games like they're, preseason, the ones in November aren't so crucial. Maybe if in November, that's another ref thing. They missed the Mike Gesicki touchdown week 1. Maybe we're sitting here at 5-5 today. At any rate, you can't start 0-3 because you then have no wiggle room. So without wiggle room, when the refs miss the awful call and when Chase Brown fumbles and when Cam Taylor-Britt can't tackle, that wiggle room is suddenly gone because you burn it up in September. Now you have 1 game left this month. Just an inexcusable... Again, it's not the... I don't know. I don't know if it's the loss. I don't know if it's the way that... I think that's it. The Bengals outplayed the Ravens on Thursday night and still can't get a win. And that's the way it is. Lamar Jackson is that incredible. He is an electric playmaker. He may be the best playmaker. He's probably already a top 10 playmaker of all time. Not a top 10 quarterback, just a top 10 playmaker. Top 10 quarterback right now, obviously. Top 5 right now, obviously. But I'm talking ever. Are there 9 playmakers better than Lamar Jackson? Are there 9 other guys in league history who can be surrounded by 3 defenders at the 32 and end up down at the 1 and do it on a consistent basis? You got that guy in your division. You're going to have to beat him for the foreseeable future. He's 27 years old. So you better figure some things out because you can't miss tackles on his number 4 receiver. And then, again, wiggle room. Bengals have given themselves none. When you make dumb mistakes, you leave no room to have mistakes that make sense. Simple as that. So that's where we're at. Next episode I'm going to do, today's Friday. I don't know when it'll be out. It'll be out sometime next week. Subscribe or just look back. Do whatever you want to do. Perhaps I'll cool off by then. Bengals go to the Chargers next, an 8:20 p.m. Sunday night football game. 2 of their next 3 in prime time, actually. So they got Chargers, Steelers, Cowboys coming up. All 3 winnable, but at the same time, so were pretty much all 6 of their losses, were they not? So, adjust your expectations. I'm going to talk about that on the next episode, and we'll get into it a little bit, where to go from here, because the division is now out of reach, I believe, barring a total Baltimore collapse. I don't see any way. The Bengals... Baltimore's 7-3. Bengals' best case scenario is probably 10-7. Baltimore's not losing 4 more games, and even if they did, they would end up with a tie, and the Ravens own the tiebreak, going 2-0. So yep, Bengals have to play for a wild card now and hope they can figure some things out along the way. And yeah, no point in talking about playoffs today, though. It's November, and the Bengals can't even win a big regular season game. They're combined, they have 4 wins. The combined record of those 4 teams that they beat is 8-28. So, yep. Win a real game. They're good enough to win real games. We've seen it. We see it every single week. But when push comes to shove, they can't close it out. So, I'll see you again next week. I'm going to try to enjoy the weekend a little bit. Not let this one totally bring me down. This felt good to get this out. Maybe you need to do this as well. I hope listening to this helps a little bit. Even if you don't want to record it and post it online, just do it in your mirror. Just look at yourself and yell. Make sure no one else is in the house and that all the windows are closed, but just look in the mirror and scream for a bit. It'll be fun. All right, my name is Matt Edwards. You have been listening to In the Jungle, a podcast mostly about the Cincinnati Bengals. If you like it, then you're a psycho because it's a very miserable show this week. But give it a subscription, give it a rating, do whatever you want to do. If you don't like it, I don't know why you're still listening, but I do appreciate your loyalty. We'll see you again next week.